The sun was high above the alien city, burning like a cruel eye in the sky, and its light fell on a place darker than any night. The slave market. It was not a market of fruits or goods. It was a market of living beings. Rows of cages stood under torn cloth roofs. Chains clinked like music of misery, and cries of the weak mixed with shouts of the traders. The crowd moved slowly. Buyers with cold eyes and heavy purses walked from cage to cage, looking at those who had been taken, beaten, and broken. Some of the slaves were tall and strong, their muscles showing they could be used for hard labor. Others were young and beautiful, sold for darker reasons. The merchants shouted prices, their voices rising above the noise. Strong arms for the mines, young ones for the houses. Buy now before the best are gone. And in the middle of this cruel place stood one cage that no one wanted. Inside it sat a girl, small and fragile, her silver skin marked with bruises, her wrists chained so tight that the metal cut into her flesh. Her hair, once bright like the stars, now hung dirty and tangled over her face. Her eyes, large and glowing faintly, looked down to the ground, as if she no longer dared to lift her head. To the buyers, she looked weak, useless, a waste of coin. Worthless, one alien merchant spat as a customer glanced at her cage. She cannot work, she cannot fight, she is nothing but trouble, another said with a cruel laugh. Even when buyers asked about her, the traders waved their hands. Forget her, she will die in a week, no strength in her bones. Not worth the chains that hold her. The girl heard every word, and though her heart hurt, she did not cry. She had no tears left. Years of pain had stolen them from her. Once, long ago, she had dreamed of freedom, of running in the fields of her home, of hearing her mother's voice, but now those dreams were dust. All she knew was the rattle of iron and the stench of the market. She sat still, waiting for the end, waiting for the day she would simply be left to rot. The air of the market grew heavy as the day passed. The heat pressed down and the cries of the weak grew quieter. The merchants shouted louder, trying to sell the last of their stock before the sun fell. Chains rattled, whips cracked, buyers haggled, and the girl sat unnoticed, forgotten, invisible. But then, something unusual happened. A figure entered the market. Different from the others, he was tall, his skin not blue, not green, not scaled like the alien races around, but pale and sunburned. His clothes were simple, dusty from travel, his boots worn from long roads, and his eyes were human, sharp, searching, filled with something the market had not seen in a long time. Pity. The merchants looked up quickly, their greedy smiles returning. Human! Human buyer! They shouted, running toward him. Come, come, we have the strongest slaves. Look at this one, strong as iron. Or this one, beautiful as a jewel. For you, a special price. The human walked slowly, his gaze sweeping over the cages. The slaves stared back at him, some with silent begging eyes, some with hatred, some too broken to look at all. He said nothing, his face unreadable. As he moved past the cages one by one, the merchants grew impatient, following him, waving their hands, trying to tempt him with their best stock. But the human did not stop until he reached the forgotten cage. The one no one wanted. There she was, the girl with silver skin and broken spirit. She lifted her head just enough to see him. Her glowing eyes, dull, lifeless for a brief moment. Their eyes met and something stirred. Something neither of them expected. The human froze, as if the whole noisy market had gone silent around him. And the girl, for the first time in years, felt something move in her chest. Hope. A merchant noticed where he was looking and laughed, shaking his head. No, no, human. Not that one. She is nothing, weak and sick. You will waste your coin, he said. Another added, she cannot even walk. She will be dead before the week ends. Forget her. Choose better. The human's eyes narrowed. His hand tightening at his side, he looked again at the girl. Her thin frame, her bruised wrists, her hopeless stare. And then he spoke. His voice firm, steady like stone cutting through water. I'll take her. The crowd of merchants fell silent for a moment, stunned. Then they burst into laughter. Mocking, shouting, why waste your money? She is nothing. A human is a fool. But the girl inside the cage heard only his words. I'll take her. Her heart, which had been buried under chains and cruelty, beat hard once again. She could not believe it. She thought she was dreaming, but the human's eyes told her it was real. And in that instant, in the middle of the market of chains, her fate began to change. The laughter of the merchants echoed through the slave market, cruel and sharp, but the human did not smile. He stood firm, staring at the fragile girl in the cage while the traders circled him like vultures. One slapped his shoulder and said, Listen, human, take another, stronger one. Pay good coin and you will have someone useful. Not this dying thing, another whispered slyly. She is cursed, weak blood, she will bring only trouble. Her kind is not worth even half a credit. But the human did not move. His voice cut through their words like a blade. I said, I'll take her. The merchants looked at one another confused, then greedy smiles returned. If a fool wanted to waste his credits, why stop him? Fine, fine, the lead merchant said, rubbing his hands together. But she is yours at full price. No haggling, she eats like a burden. She breaks like glass, but if you insist, you must pay double. The human's jaw tightened. His eyes flicked from the merchant to the girl. He saw the way she sat still, too weak to even stand. Her eyes dim like fading embers for a moment. He wondered how much pain she had endured, how many days she had been mocked, ignored, left to rot. Then without a word, he reached into his worn pouch and dropped heavy coins onto the merchant's table. The clinking sound silenced the laughter. Gasps spread through the crowd. Buyers leaned closer, whispering, why her? Why pay for the useless one? Humans are strange, foolish creatures, throwing away wealth. Some shook their heads, others laughed. But a few slaves in cages lifted their eyes with tiny sparks of hope. For if one of them could be chosen, perhaps others might too. The merchant counted quickly. Greed lighting his face. Very well, human. She is yours. Take her and go. May you not regret it. He snapped his fingers and 2 guards unlocked the cage, dragging the girl out roughly. Her thin body stumbled forward, her legs shaking like they had forgotten how to walk. The chain on her neck clattered as the guard pushed her toward the human. The girl expected a strike, a command or a cruel order, but instead, the human caught her before she fell, steadying her with gentle hands. The touch shocked her more than the crowd's laughter. It was not rough, not cruel, not claiming, but steady and careful. She looked up at him, eyes wide. And for the first time in years, she saw no hunger or greed in someone's gaze, only something she could not name. The merchant smirked, waving his hand. Take her, human, she will not last a week. Remember my words, but the human ignored him, lifting the girl's chains with a firm tug. Then he turned, walking away from the market. While the crowd whispered behind him, the heat of the sun fell on them as they stepped into the open streets. The girl struggled to keep up, her bare feet scraping against the hot stones. Every step hurt, but she forced herself forward. Inside her chest, confusion and fear battled with a tiny flame she had not felt in years. Could this human really mean freedom? Finally, they reached the edge of the market. Away from the shouts and laughter, the human stopped, pulling a small blade from his belt. The girl froze, her breath catching, fear flooding her body. Was this the moment? Did he buy her only to kill her away from the eyes of the crowd? The blade gleamed in the sunlight. Sharp and cold, he raised it toward her chains, and with a swift strike, the metal split. The heavy iron dropped to the ground with a dull thud. Her wrists, bruised and raw, were suddenly free. She stared in shock. Unable to believe it, her body trembled. Her hands touched the skin where the shackles had bitten for so long. Her lips parted, but no words came. Only a broken whisper of breath. The human sheathed his blade and looked at her, his voice calm but strong. You are free now, he said. The girl shook her head, unable to understand free. The word was strange, heavy, almost impossible to believe, she whispered, her voice hoarse. Why? Why me? There were so many stronger, better. Why take the one no one wanted? The human looked at her for a long moment, his eyes steady. Because they saw nothing in you, he said. But I did. The girl's breath caught in her throat. Tears burned her eyes, though she tried to hold them back. She had been told she was worthless so many times that she had started to believe it. But this human, a stranger from another world, had seen her differently, and that truth shook her soul more than the breaking of her chains. As they walked away from the market, she glanced back one last time. The cages still stood, the merchant still shouted, the crowd still mocked, but she was no longer part of it. Her chains lay broken in the dust, and for the first time in her life she walked toward something unknown, hope. Yet in the shadows of the alleys, unseen eyes watched them. The market masters did not like losing property, and though she was free now, danger would soon follow. Her freedom had a price, and the human had only just begun to pay it. The girl's wrists were raw where the chains had been, the skin red and cut, but she touched them again and again, unable to believe they were gone. Every step she took beside the human felt strange, like walking through a dream that could vanish at any moment. The streets outside the market were loud, filled with merchants selling fruits, metals, and spices. Yet she heard nothing but the sound of her own heart. It beat fast, too fast, as if it was trying to remind her she was still alive. The human walked ahead with steady strides, his cloak brushing against the dust, his boots firm on the ground. He did not pull her by the chain, for there was none. He simply glanced back now and then to see if she followed, and each time their eyes met, she felt something strange, something gentle, something she had never known before, not command, not cruelty, but care. Her body was weak, her legs thin from hunger, and soon she stumbled, falling to her knees on the hot stones. The pain shot through her legs, but before she could crawl, a hand reached down, strong and warm, lifting her up. The human did not scold her. He did not strike her. He only said in a calm voice, "Slow. We are not in a hurry." She stared at him, confused. Why would anyone slow their steps for her? She was nothing. She was always the one forced to run, to obey, to suffer, and yet here was this human, treating her like she mattered. They moved on, past the crowded stalls, past the stares of aliens who looked at them with suspicion and whispers. Some pointed, others laughed. The human bought the broken one. But the human ignored them all. His shoulders firm, his eyes forward. It was as if the world's noise could not touch him. As the sun began to sink lower, the streets grew quieter. The shouts of merchants fading at the edge of the city. The human stopped near a small well, pulling a flask from his bag. He filled it with water and handed it to her. She froze, staring at the flask. Her throat was dry, burning, but she did not move. She had learned long ago that gifts came with punishment, that food and drink could be taken away if she reached too quickly. The human noticed her hesitation, and with a small nod he said softly, "It's for you. Drink." Her hands shook as she took it, the cool metal pressing against her skin. She raised it to her lips and sipped, then drank deeply, the water spilling down her chin. It was the sweetest taste she had ever known. She lowered the flask slowly, her chest rising with heavy breaths, her glowing eyes wet with tears she had not meant to shed. The human said nothing, only gave her a piece of dry bread from his pouch. She ate in silence, small bites at first, then quicker, desperate until she forced herself to stop, afraid he would be angry at her hunger. But he only nodded as if to say, "Eat as much as you need." For the first time since she could remember, she felt her body warming, her stomach no longer empty. It was a strange feeling, both comforting and frightening. She whispered in a broken voice, "Why are you doing this?" The human glanced at her, the fire of the sunset reflecting in his eyes. "Because no one else would," he said simply. The word struck her harder than any whip ever had. Because no one else would. Was that the only reason? Or was there something more in his voice, something she could not yet understand? As night began to fall, they left the city behind, walking along a lonely road, the sky painted with stars. The girl stumbled again, but this time the human offered his cloak, wrapping it around her thin shoulders. The fabric was rough but warm. Smelling of earth and smoke, she clutched it tightly, her eyes lifting to the stars above. It had been so long since she had looked at the sky without bars between her and the light. The vastness frightened her, yet it also filled her with something new, possibility. They stopped by the side of the road near a small rise of rocks. The human gathered sticks and started a fire, the flames rising bright against the darkness. The girl sat close, holding the cloak around her. Watching him move, his actions were quiet, steady, not rushed as if he had done this many times before. She wondered who he was, why he was here, why he had chosen her. The fire crackled and the warmth touched her skin. Chasing away the cold of night, the girl whispered again, her voice trembling, "You could have left me, like all the others." "Why didn't you?" The human paused, staring into the fire, then turned his eyes to her. His voice was low, but filled with a strength she could feel. "Because I couldn't," he said. "You were there, and no one wanted you. I couldn't walk away." Her chest tightened, her breath caught, and for a moment, she felt the weight of her chains even though they were gone. Only this time it was not chains of iron, but chains of fear and disbelief holding her. Was it possible that she could be more than property? More than nothing? The night grew deeper, the fire burned brighter, and for the first time in her life, she did not sleep in a cage. She lay down near the fire, wrapped in the cloak, her eyes closing slowly. And as she drifted into uneasy dreams, one thought stayed with her. She was walking a road she had never walked before, a road to freedom led by a human she did not understand. But deep inside she wanted to believe, yet in the shadows beyond the fire, unseen figures watched from a distance. The market masters had not forgotten their loss, and while she slept, the danger grew closer, step by step. The fire burned low, its glow flickering against the rocks, throwing shadows that danced like silent watchers. The girl sat close to the flames, wrapped in the human's cloak, still too afraid to sleep. Her body trembled, not from cold now, but from confusion. For years she had known only cages, chains, and cruel voices, and now she sat under open stars beside a stranger who had bought her, yet freed her. The human sat across from her, quiet, sharpening a small knife against a stone. The sound was steady, scraping softly in the night, but it was not threatening. He worked with calm hands, his face lit by the fire. His eyes half lost in thought, the girl's glowing eyes studied him, trying to read him the way she had learned to read her masters. But he was not like them. There was no greed in his stare, no hunger for power, only a silence she could not understand. She pulled the cloak tighter, her voice breaking the night in a whisper. "Why me?" The human stopped his work, lifting his head slowly. Her words shook, her throat dry, though she had drunk water earlier. "Why did you choose me when no one else did?" For a moment he said nothing, his gaze steady on her face. Then he placed the knife aside and leaned closer to the fire. "Because I saw someone worth saving," he said, his voice low but strong. The girl blinked, stunned, her heart beating hard in her chest. Worth saving? No one had ever used those words for her before. She wanted to speak again, to ask more, but her voice failed. Her lips trembled and she turned her face away, hiding the tears that threatened to fall. She had promised herself long ago that she would never cry again, never show weakness, but tonight, sitting by this fire, those walls were breaking. The human noticed but did not push. He only stirred the fire, adding another stick, and then pulled out a small metal pot. Filling it with water from his flask, he dropped dried herbs into it, and soon a warm smell filled the air. The girl's stomach twisted with hunger, even though she had eaten bread earlier. She hugged the cloak tighter, ashamed of the sound her stomach made. The human glanced at her but said nothing cruel. Instead, he lifted the pot, pouring some of the warm broth into a small cup. He placed it near her hands. "Drink," he said simply. Her fingers trembled as she reached for it. The steam rising to her face, she sipped carefully, and the warmth slid down her throat, spreading through her chest. She closed her eyes for a moment, holding the cup close. It was the first hot drink she had tasted in years, maybe in her whole life. The human nodded once, satisfied, then leaned back against the rocks. For a long while they sat in silence. Only the crackle of the fire and the faint hum of the night around them. The girl felt her body growing heavier, her eyes struggling to stay open, but fear still clung to her heart. What if this was a trick? What if, when she woke, she would find herself back in chains? She whispered almost to herself, "If I sleep, will you keep me safe?" The human's head turned, his expression unreadable. "Yes," he said without hesitation. His voice was so steady that it left no room for doubt. The girl swallowed hard, her eyes lowering. No one had ever promised her safety before. Her chest tightened, her breath caught, and she finally lay down near the fire, the cloak covering her thin body. Her glowing eyes stayed open for a long time, watching the flames, listening to the human's steady breathing across from her. Slowly, very slowly, her eyes closed and sleep took her. The human watched her for a while, making sure she rested. Her face, though thin and marked by pain, looked softer in sleep. But he knew this peace would not last. The market masters would not let their loss go so easily. He had seen the way their guards watched him as he left. Danger was coming, and he would need to be ready. Hours passed, the fire burning low, the desert wind whispering across the stones. The human sat awake, his hand resting near his blade, his eyes scanning the darkness. Every rustle of the bushes, every shift of shadow made his body tense. But nothing came, not yet. When dawn began to touch the horizon, he finally allowed himself to rest. Leaning back against the rocks, the girl stirred in her sleep, whispering something in her own alien tongue, a sound both sad and soft. The human listened for a moment, then closed his eyes. He did not know what the future would bring, but he knew one thing: he had made his choice, and he would not abandon it. The girl woke to the light of morning, the fire only ashes now. For a moment she panicked, thinking the human had left, but then she saw him standing nearby, watching the road ahead, his back straight, his figure strong against the rising sun. Relief washed over her. Stronger than she expected, she rose slowly, clutching the cloak around her shoulders. The human turned to her and nodded. "We move soon. Are you ready?" She hesitated, her voice small. I will try." The human's lips curved into the faintest smile. "That is enough," he said. And so they began their journey again, stepping away from the ashes of their first night together. But unseen from far behind, shadows followed, silent and patient. The market had not forgotten its lost property, and freedom would not come without a fight. The road stretched far into the wildlands, its stones cracked, its dust rising with each step. The girl walked close behind the human, her bare feet aching, yet she did not complain. The cloak he had given her still rested on her shoulders, a shield against the cool morning wind. Every step away from the market felt unreal, like she was walking in someone else's life. Not her own, but the human knew freedom was fragile. He kept glancing back, his sharp eyes scanning the horizon. He had seen the looks in the merchants' faces, the greed burning when he took what they thought was worthless. To them, she was still property, and property stolen meant revenge. The girl noticed his unease, her glowing eyes lifting to his face. You think they will come?" she whispered, her voice trembling. The human did not answer at once, his jaw tightening. Finally he said, "Yes, they will not let you go so easily, but if they come, they'll find me waiting." Her chest tightened, her heart pounding with fear. She had known punishment, pain, and cruelty, but never someone willing to fight for her. She wanted to believe his words, yet shadows of doubt crept into her mind. Why would anyone risk their life for her? By midday, they reached a ridge overlooking a stretch of barren land. The human stopped, kneeling on one knee, studying the dirt. There, faint marks, too fresh to be old. Bootprints, heavy and many, moving in their direction. The girl's breath caught, panic filling her chest. "They are coming," she whispered, clutching the cloak tight. The human rose slowly, his hand resting near the hilt of his blade. "Yes," he said, his voice calm but cold. "They are close." The girl's body shook, her instincts screaming to run, to hide. But she knew she could not outrun hunters, not in her weakened state. She turned to him, fear shining in her eyes. "They will take me back. They will chain me again. You should leave me, save yourself." The human looked at her sharply. "Never," he said, his voice firm like iron striking stone. "I did not free you to abandon you. They'll have to go through me first." Her lips parted. Her heart stunned at his words. No one had ever spoken for her, never stood for her. Tears burned her eyes. But she quickly wiped them away, afraid to appear weak. Yet the truth was, her soul was trembling more from his promise than from her fear. As the sun fell lower, they kept moving, but slower now. The human was careful, guiding her toward a cluster of old ruins half buried in the sand. Broken walls and fallen towers, ancient and forgotten. "Here," he said, leading her inside. "These stones will give us cover. We'll rest here until night." The girl sat against a wall, her body weak, her breath shallow. The human started a small fire, his movements quick, efficient. But his eyes kept flicking to the shadows outside the ruins. Every gust of wind made him grip his blade tighter. The girl's fear grew heavier, crushing her chest. She whispered softly, "If they come, they will kill you because of me." The human turned his head, meeting her gaze across the fire. "Then let them try," he said. "I have faced worse than greedy merchants. You are not going back. Not while I breathe." The words struck her like lightning. She wanted to speak, to tell him she was not worth this. But her throat closed and only a choked sound escaped. Her glowing eyes filled. And for the first time in years, she let tears fall. Silent tears that dropped onto the cloak, not of despair, but of something she could not name. Night fell, the ruins cloaked in silence. The fire burned low, its light casting long shadows on the broken walls. The girl leaned against the stone, half asleep, her body finally too tired to fight the pull of rest. But the human stayed awake, his eyes sharp, his body still, and then he heard it. A faint sound beyond the walls, boots pressing into sand, whispers carried by the wind. He rose slowly, his hand gripping his blade, his heartbeat steady. They had come. Just as he knew they would, the girl stirred, her glowing eyes opening, catching the tension in his stance. Her voice shook. "They're here, aren't they?" The human gave a single nod. "Yes," he whispered. "Stay behind me. Do not move until I say." Her body froze, fear surging through her veins like fire. But when she looked at him, standing tall, blade ready, Eyes burning with resolve, something steadied her heart. For the first time she believed she was not alone. From the shadows, figures began to emerge, cloaked in darkness, their weapons glinting in the faint firelight. The hunters had come, their steps slow, confident, their voices low and cruel. One sneered, "Human, hand over the girl. She belongs to the market. You cannot keep her." The human's voice cut the night like steel. "She belongs to no one," he said, his blade glinting in the firelight. "She is free." The hunters laughed, cruel and cold. "Then you will die for her," one hissed. Raising his weapon, the girl's heart pounded. Her breath quickening, she wanted to scream, to run, but her voice caught in her throat. All she could do was press her back against the stone. Eyes wide, watching, the human stepped forward, his shadow tall against the fire. His voice was steady, his eyes unshaken. "Then come and take her," and with that, the first clash of steel broke the silence of the night. The night air was thick with tension. The ruins echoed with the soft scrape of boots against stone and sand. The girl huddled behind the human, her hands pressed tightly over her chest. Her eyes glowed faintly in the firelight, reflecting fear and hope. She had never felt so powerless. Yet strangely safe at the same time. The human's grip on his blade was steady, his body a shield between her and the hunters. He could feel their eyes on him, their malicious intent cutting through the darkness. One step closer, one wrong move, and everything could end in an instant. But he did not flinch. He had made a promise, and promises were not broken. "Human," hissed one of the hunters, his voice dripping with malice, "give her to us. She belongs to the market. No one can save her now." The human's eyes narrowed, his voice cold and low. "She belongs to no one. Not now, not ever." The hunters advanced, their weapons raised, steel flashed in the firelight, glinting like the teeth of hungry beasts. The girl's heart thumped violently. She wanted to scream, to run, but she was frozen by fear and awe. This human, this stranger, was standing in front of her like a wall she could not climb. The first hunter lunged, his blade slicing through the air. The human met him head-on, steel clashing against steel, sparks flying. He moved with precision, blocking, twisting, striking. Years of hard work, years of survival had sharpened his body and mind. He was no ordinary man. He was a shield, a warrior, a savior. The girl watched, her breath shallow, each strike, each dodge. Each clash of metal made her heart race. She had never seen someone fight like this, and every time he parried an attack, she felt a spark of hope ignite in her chest. Maybe she could be free. The hunters were relentless, their numbers greater than his, but the human's movements were fluid, almost dance-like. He turned, sidestepped, spun and struck, every move precise, calculated, deadly. The ground shook under the force of their fight, sand and dust rising around them, shadows twisting and stretching in the firelight. The ruins became a battlefield alive with danger. The girl's eyes widened as one hunter broke through his defense. The human stumbled, but quickly recovered. A quick strike to the hunter's side sent him sprawling to the ground. The other hunters hesitated, a flicker of fear crossing their faces. They had underestimated him. They had thought he was just a weak human. They had thought he would run, but he was nothing like they expected. The girl's hands trembled. She wanted to help, wanted to do something, but all she could do was watch and pray silently, pray that he would not fall, pray that she would not be taken back. Another hunter attacked from behind. The human spun, catching the blade midair, twisting it with his strength. A grunt escaped the hunter as he fell back. Defeated, the human did not stop, did not pause. He moved like a shadow, fast and precise, every step, every strike. Every movement was controlled, every action designed to protect her. The girl felt tears prick her eyes for the first time. Someone was risking everything for her. Someone believed she was worth fighting for. And in that moment, she realized something she had never known. She was not worthless. She was not alone. The fight continued, fierce and unrelenting. The hunters were skilled, but their numbers did not matter. The human fought like a storm, unstoppable, unyielding, one by one. The hunters fell back, wounded, defeated. Retreating into the shadows, the fire flickered, casting long shadows on their retreat. And finally, silence returned to the ruins, broken only by the human's heavy breathing. The girl ran to him, dropping to her knees beside him. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice trembling. He looked at her, exhaustion in his eyes, but determination still burning. "I'm fine," he said. She could hear the strain in his voice. "But we cannot stay here. They will come again." She nodded, understanding the danger was not over, but for the first time she felt safe, because he was with her and he would not let anyone harm her. They moved through the ruins, careful, silent. The human led her to a small alcove, hidden from view. He offered her water, food, anything he could spare. She drank, her hands shaking, her mind still reeling from the fight. I never knew someone would fight for me, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. The human looked at her, a faint smile on his lips. You are worth more than they could ever see, he said. You are free now, and I will make sure you stay that way. The night stretched on, and the ruins became their sanctuary. For the first time in her life, the girl felt hope that someone could care, that someone could protect her, hope that the chains of her past could be broken. And as she lay close to him, still trembling, she realized that her life had changed forever. Because the human had stood for her, and in that stand, she found her first taste of freedom. The fire burned low, the wind whispered through the broken walls, and in the quiet, the girl understood the truth she had longed to hear. She was not alone, she was not forgotten, she was free. And the human, tired but unbroken, had given her that freedom. Even if it meant facing the shadows alone, even if it meant standing against the world, even if it meant risking everything for her. The first light of dawn crept slowly over the jagged horizon. The ruins, which had felt so threatening the night before, now glowed in soft amber. The girl shivered, not from cold, but from exhaustion and wonder. She had survived the night. She had survived the hunters, and beside her the human sat quietly, his gaze scanning the ruins for any sign of danger. The night's fight had changed everything. The human's strength, his courage, his unwavering resolve had given her a new life. A life she had only dreamed of in whispers. A life she had thought impossible, and now, standing on the threshold of a new day, she felt something she had never felt before. Hope. Are you ready? The human asked, his voice low but firm. She nodded, still catching her breath. Her hands trembled as she adjusted the worn cloak around her shoulders. Ready for what? She whispered, unsure of what came next. Ready to leave this place, to start over, to be free, he said. Offering his hand, her eyes widened. Her heart pounding, freedom, such a simple word. Yet it felt heavier than all the chains she had ever known. They moved cautiously through the ruins, avoiding broken walls and hidden crevices. Every shadow seemed like it could hide a threat. But as the sky lightened, the fear that had haunted her slowly lifted. Birds sang somewhere above, their calls a strange comfort. The air smelled of dust, smoke, and something cleaner, fresher. It was the scent of possibility, of a world waiting to be explored. The human led her down a narrow path away from the ruins. The city in the distance was still alive, but the chaos felt distant now. They reached a small clearing, surrounded by trees that swayed gently in the morning breeze. The girl knelt, touching the soft grass beneath her fingers. She could not remember the last time she had felt anything soft beneath her hands. Not chains, not cold floors, not hard stone. She smiled faintly, a smile that came from deep inside. A smile she had thought she had lost forever. The human watched her silently, a faint smile of his own crossing his lips. You're safe now, he said, and she felt the weight of his words settle over her like a warm blanket. I never thought I would feel safe, she whispered, her voice breaking. You deserve to be safe, he replied simply. No more chains, no more auctions, no more fear, only freedom, only tomorrow, only a life they could build together. They continued walking, the city growing closer. People moved in the streets, unaware of the girl's story, unaware of the battles that had been fought. But she did not care. She had been invisible before, ignored, unwanted, but now she mattered. She mattered to someone, and that changed everything. As they entered the city, the human kept his hand close to hers, not just for protection, but as a silent promise, a promise that she would never face the world alone again. The girl looked around, her eyes wide with wonder. Buildings, lights, people bustling, technology she had only seen from a distance, and for the first time she felt a spark of excitement. Maybe she could belong here. Maybe she could build a life here. They reached a small, quiet place near the edge of the city. The human opened a door, revealing a modest room. Not fancy, not grand, but safe, clean, welcoming. Home, he said simply. The word sounded foreign to her, but it felt right. She stepped inside, her eyes taking in the small details, a bed, a table, a small window letting in the morning light. She had never known home, but now she could feel it. The human set down a small bag, containing food and water. Eat, he said. We'll figure out the rest later. She nodded, grateful, and sat down to eat. Each bite was a reminder that she was alive, that she was free, that someone cared enough to fight for her, to save her, to bring her here. After a while, she looked up at him, her eyes shining with unshed tears. Why did you save me? She asked softly. The human paused, considering, then replied, Because no one deserves to be treated like they're nothing, he said. You deserve to live, to dream, to be free. Her heart swelled at his words. She realized that she had been given a gift more valuable than anything. Life, hope, and a chance to be herself. The sun rose higher, filling the room with golden light. And in that light, the girl felt a weight lift from her shoulders. The chains of the past, the fear, the pain, they were behind her now. Ahead lay a new day, a new life, a new beginning. And for the first time in her life, she smiled freely, without fear, without hesitation, because she knew, no matter what came next, she would not face it alone. The human had promised, and promises once made were never broken. As they stood by the window watching the city wake, the girl realized something she had never understood before. Freedom was not just the absence of chains. Freedom was the presence of someone who believed in you, and she had found that in the most unlikely place. With the most unlikely human, a new dawn had come, not just in the sky, but in her heart, and she knew no one would ever take that from her again. The city stretched before them, full of life, full of possibility, and together they stepped forward, leaving the past behind. The girl free, the human steadfast, two souls bound not by chains, but by courage, by hope, by a promise kept. And as the sun climbed higher, casting light over the ruins and the city alike, they walked into their new life, ready for whatever the future held. Because for the first time the girl was truly free, and nothing, not hunters, not chains, not fear, could ever take that away again.